Thanksgiving had always been a quiet affair at my parents' house. A gentle rhythm of mashed potatoes, roasted turkey, and laughter that rarely veered into chaos. That year, though, something had shifted. I had kept a secret for years, secret so large it could no longer fit into the quiet corners of my life. I had $12 million, saved, invested, and grown quietly over time. And it had been my little piece of control in a world where I often felt powerless. I thought it would remain that way, hidden and harmless, tucked behind spreadsheets and retirement accounts. It started in My sister, Claire, had come over early that morning, her smile just a little too wide, her questions a little too pointed. "So, how's work?" she asked, but it wasn't really about work. I knew her patterns. She had always measured herself against me, silently tallying victories and losses like some internal scoreboard. And then, like a match dropped on dry leaves, she stumbled upon it. A casually misplaced bank statement, left open on my laptop because I had been reviewing an investment portfolio while waiting for the turkey to roast. Her eyes widened, and for a fleeting second I thought she might gasp or maybe laugh. But no, the gasp came later. You have $12 million, she asked, her voice trembling somewhere between incredulity and accusation. I laughed nervously, trying to diffuse the tension. "Yeah, it's been a while since I mentioned it," I said, hoping the humor would smooth over her shock. But it didn't. It never does with Claire. Before I knew it, the living room, once a sanctuary of family chatter, had transformed into a battlefield. My mother appeared at the doorway, eyebrows raised, and then my father, always the quiet observer, shuffled closer with the faintest frown. My uncle even peeked in, muttering something about prudent investments, though I could tell curiosity and a hint of greed was driving him more than admiration. The room pulsed with a subtle but undeniable tension. Every whispered question, every sideways glance, every eye always knew you were doing well carried an unspoken weight. Why didn't you tell us sooner? Why didn't we get a share? Claire, though, was the most direct. "You know," she said, her voice gaining a steel edge, "I probably deserved that money more than you." My stomach tightened. I knew this argument would come eventually, but hearing it voiced so openly was different. She wasn't joking. She wasn't teasing. She believed it, she really did. I tried to reason with her. "It's not about deserving," I said carefully, choosing my words like stepping stones across a river. "I worked for it. I saved it. You have your own path." But my words fell flat, bouncing off her conviction like stones thrown at a brick wall. The rest of the family, unsurprisingly, began to rally around her. My mother started talking about fairness and supporting each other, phrases I had always understood as warm and comforting, but which now felt like weapons. "We're family," she said, "and family shares." My father nodded in agreement, adding, "You should think about what's right." Their words, once grounding, now felt like pressure mounting from all sides, like a tide threatening to sweep me off my feet. I tried to escape. I stepped into the kitchen, hoping the scent of roasting turkey might ground me. But even there, Claire followed, her voice softer now, but equally persistent. "Just think about it," she murmured. "I've always supported you. I've always helped when I could. Doesn't that count for something?" It was surreal. I had never seen my family act like this, not even in arguments over trivial matters like who would inherit the old cabin or whose turn it was to host Christmas. Money, apparently, was a different language entirely. a dialect that brought out a raw, unfiltered side in people I thought I knew. I remembered sitting down at the kitchen counter, trying to gather my thoughts, tracing the rim of my coffee mug as though it held some magic that could calm the storm. My mind raced. How had a simple disclosure, a casually open spreadsheet, turned Thanksgiving into a negotiation table for my fortune? How had love and laughter warped into entitlement and expectation? And then it hit me. It wasn't just about the money. It never really was. It was about validation, recognition, a sense of superiority, and, yes, greed. The $12 million was just a mirror, reflecting desires and resentments that had always existed but had gone unnoticed until now. I tried again, reasoning, pleading, explaining the work, the late nights, the calculated risks. This isn't a gift. It's my life's work, I said, voice taut with frustration, but every word seemed to fuel the fire. Claire leaned closer, eyes shining with something I couldn't name: desperation, ambition, and the rest of the family nodded, agreeing silently, eagerly. Their faces a chorus of expectation. The tension cracked open further when my aunt suggested, "Maybe you should at least consider giving her a portion. It's not wrong to be generous." It was a suggestion, but it landed like a decree. My heart pounded. I wanted to scream, to tell them they were crossing a line that wasn't theirs to cross. But the words stuck in my throat, as fragile as glass. And so the day went on, plates of food barely touched, conversation stilted and loaded with implication. My laughter was forced, my smiles thin. Every comment, every toast, every cheers felt like a challenge. A subtle reminder that my secret had now become a battleground by the time desert rolled around. I realized that Thanksgiving would never feel the same. The warmth, the tradition, the cozy familiarity, all had been invaded by envy and entitlement. I watched Claire slice the pumpkin pie, her movements precise, calculated, her eyes occasionally flicking toward me, a silent assertion of claim. I understood then that my family didn't just want my money, they wanted a piece of me, of my achievements, my independence. And I knew, as the laughter and chatter continued around me, that this was only the beginning. The $12 million, once a quiet fortress of my freedom, had become a lightning rod, attracting desires and claims that I had never anticipated, and perhaps could never fully contain. The days following Thanksgiving were a blur of confrontation and negotiation. Claire's demands didn't soften with time. They only sharpened. She had started leaving subtle notes around the house, little reminders that my fortune could change our lives and should be shared with those who truly deserve it. At first, I laughed nervously, dismissing them as harmless hints, but the humor quickly drained as her words began to gnaw at the edges of my patience. Then came the phone calls, one after another. Each family member seemed to find a new reason why I should relinquish a portion of my wealth. My mother spoke of sacrifices she had made for me as a child, implying that my success was owed in part to her guidance. My father suggested that fairness dictated I distribute some of my savings among family members. Even distant cousins chimed in, citing loyalty and tradition as arguments for why my money should be theirs. Every conversation, every plea, was like a hand pushing against my chest, demanding surrender. Claire was relentless. She cornered me in the living room one evening, her voice low but insistent. "I've always been the one who put the family first," she said. "I've supported you emotionally, financially when I could. Don't you see that I deserve this more than anyone?" Her eyes, usually warm and familiar, now glimmered with something fierce, almost predatory. I wanted to remind her that success comes from effort and planning, not entitlement. But the words felt hollow in the face of her conviction and the subtle pressure building from the rest of the family. It wasn't just emotional pressure. There was strategy in every move. I noticed the conversations had shifted subtly from requests to logical arguments, as though my family had studied the art of persuasion overnight. They cited inheritance patterns, tax implications, even charitable giving as reasons I should hand over a portion of my fortune. Every argument was carefully crafted, polished, designed to make me question not only my actions but my morality. I tried to resist. I reminded myself of the countless nights I had spent calculating investments, navigating risk, building a secure future. This money was my lifeline, the manifestation of years of discipline and foresight. Yet every plea, every glance laden with expectation, tugged at my resolve. The internal struggle became exhausting. I began to see family gatherings as exercises in endurance rather than moments of joy. One evening, Claire escalated. She had prepared a slideshow detailing every contribution she had made to my life, highlighting emotional support, financial assistance, and even small sacrifices she claimed had enabled me to succeed. She presented it during dinner, her tone calm but assertive, while the rest of the family watched intently, nodding in agreement. The words cut deeper than I expected. Each slide was a carefully constructed narrative designed to guilt me, to make me feel indebted. I felt the room closing in, the air thick with unspoken accusations. I stood my ground, but the effort drained me. "This isn't about who deserves it more," I said, voice shaking but firm. "I worked for this. I saved this. It's mine, not a prize to be awarded based on perception." My declaration hung in the air, met with murmurs of disbelief and subtle disapproval. Claire's smile was infuriatingly calm, as if my resistance were merely a predictable obstacle in her path. As weeks passed, the tension seeped into every interaction. Casual visits became interrogations. Phone calls that once brought warmth now carried veiled demands. Even friends outside the family began noticing my distraction, the way I flinched when family names appeared on my phone. The financial empire I had built with pride was transforming into a source of vulnerability, and I could feel my independence slipping through my fingers under the weight of familial expectation. I began documenting everything: notes from conversations, screenshots of texts, recordings where possible, anything that could serve as a record. Not because I intended to use them immediately, but because I realized I needed a sense of control, a safety net against manipulation. The act of recording provided a small relief, a sense that while my family attempted to claim my fortune, I could at least claim my narrative. Despite my efforts, the emotional toll was immense. Every family dinner became a battlefield. Claire's subtle jabs and pointed statements punctuated every gathering. "We could really make this work for all of us," she would say, a smile playing on her lips. "It would just be fair." And with each remark, the silent chorus of family voices behind her grew louder, echoing her sentiment, testing my patience, probing for weakness. At some point, I realized I had to make a decision, not about giving in, but about protecting my autonomy while maintaining some semblance of family connection. I began crafting boundaries clearly defined, immovable lines that delineated what was acceptable and what wasn't. It was a delicate dance, too rigid, and I risked alienation; too soft, and I risked losing control of my life and my fortune. The real turning point came one late evening when Claire confronted me alone. Her tone was almost tender, almost conciliatory, yet beneath it lay a sharp edge. "I just want what's fair," she said. "I don't want to fight. We could avoid so much pain if you just shared a little." I looked at her and realized something fundamental. This wasn't a conversation about fairness or generosity. It was about power and perception. The idea that my success could be wielded as a tool for validation. I stood firm, breathing deeply, recalling every late night, every calculated risk, every decision that had led me to this point. "Sharing isn't the same as surrendering," I said finally. "I can care for you, support you, even help guide you, but that doesn't mean my life's work belongs to anyone but me." Her eyes flashed with a mix of frustration and disbelief, but I saw the faintest crack in her armor, a hint that my refusal had struck a nerve. It wasn't victory, not yet. The storm was still raging, subtle and unrelenting, but for the first time I felt the strength to stand against it without collapsing under guilt or expectation. I realized that wealth had exposed not just desire in others, but resilience in me. The battle wasn't just about money. It was about defining who I was and what I would allow to shape my life. The weeks turned into months, and the Thanksgiving confrontation became a pivot point in my family life. I had expected tension, but the persistence of the pressure from Claire and the rest of my family was something entirely different, slow, grinding force that tested every ounce of my patience and self-control. I realized I had to confront the situation not just with words, but with strategy and clarity, or risk letting my autonomy slip away entirely. I began by reevaluating my interactions with the family. Casual visits and dinner invitations had to be restructured. I could no longer allow the dining table to become a courtroom. Instead, I initiated separate conversations, one-on-one, emphasizing love and connection without bending to their financial expectations. With my parents, I framed discussions around emotional support and shared experiences rather than monetary distribution. "We have each other," I reminded them gently. "That's more valuable than any sum of money." Slowly, I noticed subtle shifts. The atmosphere was less charged, less insistent, though Claire remained a formidable presence. Claire, however, did not relent. She moved from direct requests to more manipulative tactics, invoking family history, childhood sacrifices, and even public perception as reasons I should yield to her claim. She seemed to believe that persistence and emotional weight could break me. I learned to recognize these moments and respond calmly, without conceding. I realized the most potent defense was my composure, the ability to remain centered in the face of demands, showing that while I valued family, I was not vulnerable to coercion. I also took practical steps to secure my financial independence. I consulted with lawyers, accountants, and financial advisors to ensure my wealth was legally insulated from potential claims or manipulation. It was a sobering process, but necessary. The act of establishing firm, professional boundaries gave me a renewed sense of control, a reminder that my life and achievements were mine alone. The $12 million was more than money. It was a symbol of years of perseverance, and I refused to let it become a weapon against me. Over time, I found a delicate balance between connection and defense. I engaged in family activities, attended events, and participated in holidays. But I reframed conversations to focus on shared experiences rather than financial expectations. I discovered that love and respect could exist alongside firm boundaries, and that maintaining autonomy did not mean alienation. Slowly, the family learned to navigate around the topic of my fortune, or at least to treat it with the respect it demanded. The confrontation with Claire, though lingered, there were moments when her eyes would flicker with unspoken expectation, when a subtle comment hinted that she still measured her worth against my wealth. I learned to meet these moments with calm acknowledgement, never giving in, never escalating. It was a lesson in emotional intelligence and endurance, teaching me that power often lies not in force, but in measured restraint and unwavering clarity. Reflecting on the experience, I understood something fundamental. Money reveals true character. It exposes insecurities, envy, and entitlement in ways that nothing else can. It also tests loyalty, patience, and personal boundaries. My family's reactions were not a reflection of love lost, but of desires misaligned with respect for autonomy. The ordeal taught me to discern intent from expectation and generosity from manipulation. In the end, I realized that my fortune was not the central issue. The real conflict was about identity, respect, and the boundaries we set to protect what we have worked for. Claire and my family learned, slowly but surely, that my life's work was mine alone, a bargaining chip, not a tool for validation, and certainly not an obligation. And in that realization, I found a quiet strength, an unshakable understanding that while wealth can complicate relationships, it can also clarify them. Separating genuine care from entitlement, I continued to support my family in ways that did not compromise my independence. I offered guidance, mentorship, and shared experiences, allowing love and connection to flourish without yielding control over my achievements. And gradually, the intensity of demands diminished. My sister, while still ambitious and began to recognize the boundaries I had set, and the family learned to celebrate my success without treating it as theirs by right. Looking back, Thanksgiving was the catalyst, the moment when hidden truths collided with ambition and expectation. It was painful, yes, but it was also illuminating. I learned that wealth is not just a measure of financial success, but a test of integrity, resilience, and the ability to maintain one's identity in the face of pressure. My $15 million had brought out the worst and the best in my family, revealing truths that had always existed but had been dormant until confronted by opportunity and envy. And as I sit back, reflecting on the journey, I understand that the lesson extends beyond money. It's about self-respect, clarity, and the courage to stand firm when everything around you tries to shift the ground beneath your feet. I know now that I can love my family fiercely, support them generously, and still protect my autonomy. The wealth I built will continue to serve as a foundation for my life, not as a weapon, not as a source of guilt, but as a testament to perseverance, careful planning, and the unwavering belief that some things are earned, not owed.